Hello, this is Mike, the creator of inSIDious, and in this video I'll take you through the basic waveforms and the functionality of the Wave Selector right there. Now when you start inSIDious, you'll be starting with that sound, but I'm going to switch over to the init sound. This sound has everything reset to default and is a very basic sawtooth wave. I'm first going to switch off the waveform so that there's no sound at all. If I try to play some notes on the keyboard, you can hear some slight noise and see that something is happening there in the scope view. And that is part of the circuit emulation of inSIDious. It's also present when a waveform is selected and it plays that sound. And the real SID chip does exactly the same thing. But in inSIDious, you can switch it off for a cleaner sound. Here are the options. In the options panel, there is a button to disable circuit noise. That button is saved with your own snapshots, so you can choose whether to keep the sound authentic or not. Now when I play some notes, you can see that not much is happening. There's no noise. So back to the Wave Selector. On the left, we have the basic waveforms: pulse, sawtooth, triangle, and noise. This is the triangle waveform. It's a very basic sound, quite similar to a sine wave. But it's got some extra harmonics. This is the basic sawtooth wave. You can notice that on the 6581, none of the waveforms are actually very pure. They have extra harmonics and don't sound exactly like other synthesizers. You can see it's a bit stepped and weird. This is the pulse waveform. We'll come back to that in a minute. This one is the noise waveform. It's got that distinctive old school digital noise sound, and you can hear that it's got a very distinct pitch. It's actually tuned to the same pitch as the normal waveforms. Sometimes when you're doing certain types of sounds, that's quite a nice thing, that you can hear the pitch of the noise in there. Now let's go back to the pulse waveform. The pulse wave is probably the most used sound in Commodore 64 music. Currently, it's a pure square wave. This is because the on part of the wave is the same length as the off part of the wave. Now we can change this using the center control in the modulation section. Already you can hear that classic SID sound. Now if I drag it from full left to full right, you can hear a full sweep of the pulse widths. At the extreme edges, the sound becomes silent, and the indicator here will turn red to show you which edge it's gone out of range. You can control that control, like with most of them, with automation in your DAW or DAW, Digital Audio Workstation, whatever you prefer to call it. I'm going to call it a DAW. Or you can use the modulation controls to automate that, which you can learn about those in another video. Now, unlike most other synthesizers, the SID chip can combine its waveforms together and produce a very strange, unusual result. It doesn't just add them together, it produces some very unusual waveforms. Now that's the pulse and triangle, and that's the most usable on the 6581. The other ones are pretty quiet. On the A580 you get a different set of waveforms and they're all pretty usable, although most of them do sound pretty similar to each other. It's not possible to combine anything with the noise. On the real SID, that completely locks up the channel and causes it to go silent. So when you select the noise, all the others are disabled. If the combined wave includes the pulse wave, it's affected by the pulse width. You can see that as I move the pulse width center to the right, the waveform gets cut off. On the 6581, if you use any of the other combinations with the pulse wave, it cuts off at half the range instead. That is just one of the many unusual quirks of the SID. It doesn't actually do that on the 8580. You get the full range on all of the combined waveforms, but the 6581 is a little bit weirder. Okay, the small t here represents the test bit. Now, on the SID, setting the test bit stops the oscillator completely and resets it. When you clear the test bit, the oscillator is restarted again and the waveform starts from 0. So basically it goes silent and then it can restart again from the beginning. Now in inSIDious, if you switch on the test bit, it acts as if it was set and then immediately cleared, and what it does, it allows you to reset the waveform to 0 phase. It can be quite a subtle effect, but it's very useful in some circumstances. So to demonstrate it, I'll use 2 channels. And I've got sawtooths in both of those. But I will adjust the tuning of one of them just to get a nice chorus effect. If I just keep playing the same note with the test bit switched off, you can hear the modulation of the chorus. It's constant and it's predictable. It just keeps going whether the notes are being played or not. If I switch on the test bit in one channel, only that channel will have its phase reset to 0 on every note. And that gives it a sort of randomization whereby one channel its phase changes versus the other one. And you can see it in the scope at the bottom. You can see that one of the waves is trying to carry on its merry way, while the other one is just bouncing around all over the place. Now if I set both of them on, they'll both reset on every note and be in perfect sync at the start of each note. So that can give an extra attack to some notes. When you're doing synthesis, it can be useful to want to do that. Next are Two of the more advanced SID features, ring mod and hard sync. When you enable either of them, the channel is modulated by the previous channel, so you need two channels for these to work. You can learn all about those and the best ways to use them in another video. The next button is the key tracking or pitch tracking button. When it's enabled, the channel will respond to pitch that's incoming on the MIDI notes or in the modulation section here. It has three states. It has a full on, half on and off. If it's set to half, then it doesn't respond to the MIDI keyboard, but it does respond to the pitch here. If I switch that back on, you can hear that it responds to both the modulation and the MIDI notes. With it on half, no matter what notes I play, it stays the same root pitch. If it's switched off, it doesn't respond to either. You can still change the pitch of the channel using these controls here, but it just doesn't respond to any of the external input. And it might seem a bit useless, but when you combine it with other channels, it can do some more interesting stuff. So there are different variations. It actually works a lot better when you do it with the modulation for the ring or the sync controls, but they'll be in another video. And it's very useful when you're making sounds using the step table. Okay. Our final two entries are pretty straightforward. You can drag the tune value up and down with the mouse to change the root pitch of the channel. And the width value adds or subtracts from pulse width. So if I switch to pulse, reset that back to the center. They don't seem very useful demonstrated here, but you can see how useful they really are in the video about the step table. Right, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. Thank you very much.